In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your steering knuckle on your Ford Focus. It's located behind your front wheel. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to remove our wheel. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to remove our caliper. You have to remove the bolts and take it off the rotor. Make sure you don't drop your pad. And hang it up with a caliper hanger. Remove your rotor. Using a 32mm socket, we're going to remove our axle nut. You want to try to see if your axle is free. You're giving it a couple of whacks with a rubber mallet. If that doesn't work, you can try punch with a sledgehammer. Sometimes you might need an air hammer, and then that usually frees things up. Using a 15mm socket, we're going to remove our nut for our tie rod. Once you remove the nut, you're going to give it a whack right here. We're going to disconnect our wheel speed sensor by pushing in on this tab and wiggling it off. Now disconnect it from its holder and also from this bracket. Just set that aside. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to remove our nut on our ball joint. I like to get the nut going first and moving the bolt around before taking it completely off. Using a T55 Torx bit socket on the head of the bolt, I'm going to hold that still while I take the nut off the remainder of the way. Now you can pull the bolt out. I'm going to use an exhaust clamp in my pry bar and pull down. Okay. So once you get your cold chisel in there to spread it a little bit more, you can pull down. I have an exhaust clamp here to help with leverage and to hold it in place. You're going to need to move your caliper out of the way. Make sure you don't twist your brake hose, kink it in any way. So just set it off to the side. I'm going to hang mine off my strut. Since we're transferring over our backing plate to the new knuckle, we're going to remove it now. I'm going to use a 10mm socket to remove these bolts. Using a 15mm socket, we're going to take out this bolt for our strut. At this point, we're just going to let our knuckle rest on top of the control arm. Going to use a T25 Torx bit socket to remove our speed sensor. Take out your wheel speed sensor. Where your strut meets the knuckle, you're going to have to spread this out. You can use a tool to do that. You can use a pry bar. You can use a cold chisel and a hammer. I'm going to use this tool. I'm just going to open it up a little bit, and then I'm going to hammer down on the knuckle to free it from the strut. Make sure you have your knuckle in your lower control arm still when you're taking your strut out of the knuckle. Your axle should come out after we drop this out. Just make sure your axle is free and not coming with the knuckle completely. Pry down on my pry bar underneath on the control arm, move it out of the way. Okay, once you get your axle out, I usually use a bungee cord and strap it up. So I'm just going to suspend my axle up with a bungee cord so it doesn't get pulled out of the transmission. And now we can take our knuckle off like that. You're going to want to clean this up if yours is rusty like ours. That'll make it easier putting on the new knuckle. You might have to lower your axle out of the way. Just don't let it fall out. To begin putting our knuckle on, we're going to start with the ball joint and just line it up. Once it's lined up, we're going to lower our axle off the bungee cord and start putting it in our knuckle. Make sure that you line up the spline. Once you get that all lined up and the axle is in, leave it loose, don't put the nut on yet. Now you're going to need your pry bar. I do recommend using an exhaust clamp to help you pry it down. I usually put my leg on it. Once you're lined up, you're going to make sure your axle is still in the spline properly. And we're going to push up on the knuckle and push in on the strut. I usually tap on my strut to get it into the knuckle. So I removed my exhaust clamp, and now I'm going to press my knuckle into the strut using a jack on the floor. You're going to push in on that steering knuckle, make sure it's going in straight. You might have to turn the wheel. Once it's lined up, you can start jacking it up. If you're getting too much resistance, it's not lined up properly. So I have some pressure on the bottom with my jack. I have my separator in the back of my new knuckle, just to open it up a little bit. I'm just going to tap on the strut, and it should go up. Once it stops moving up, I'm going to jack my jack up a little bit more. There we go. And now we're just going to jack it up the rest of the way. Make sure that that tab on the strut is lined up with the slot in the back of the knuckle. Once that's in place, remove your floor jack. It'll be easier to do it. You're going to push up on your lower control arm, and that strut should sit right where it belongs, and your ball joint should be where it belongs as well. I'm going to release my tool that spreads the strut. If you used a cold chisel, remove it now. Put your bolt in for your ball joint and start your nut. Now we can start our bolt for our strut as well. Now we're going to put our axle nut on. All right, so I'm going to use a screwdriver just to push my knuckle out so I can get my tie rod in. And now we're just going to start the nut on that. I like to get everything in place before I torque anything down. Make sure everything works right. Now we're going to tighten our ball joint. Just snug it up. We're going to torque this to 61 foot-pounds. I'm going to keep that still with my ratchet. We're going to tighten our strut bolt to 59 foot-pounds, and then we're going to go another half a turn for 180 degrees. There's that. That's a quarter. And that's a half. So now we're going to snug this up, the tie rod. Once it's snug, we're going to torque it to 35 foot-pounds. Place your speed sensor in. And get the bolt started. Just snug it up, and then go about a quarter of a turn. Put your dust shield on, line up the holes. And start your bolts. Now we can snug those up. Make sure you apply your anti-seize to your hub so that your rotor doesn't get stuck on. Now you can put your rotor on. I usually use a lug nut to hold it on. I'm going to use two because I'm going to be torquing my axle nut. I'm going to need those to protect the studs. Remove your caliper from its hanger. And we're going to put our caliper back on. Make sure that your pad is where it belongs. Make sure your hose isn't kinked in any way. And slide it on. Once you get your caliper on there, you got to line up your bolt and get that started. Do the same on the top one. I'm going to snug these up. Now we're going to torque them to 129 foot-pounds. Plug in your ABS sensor. Make sure you hear that click, and now you're going to follow it and attach it to its holder and the bracket. Now let's tighten down our axle nut and then torque that. Using a pry bar to hold your wheel from spinning, you're going to torque it to 59 foot-pounds, and then you're going to go 90 degrees or a quarter of a turn. Remove your pry bar, take off the lug nuts, and you can put your wheel back on. Make sure you go down to your local alignment shop and get your car aligned. Put your wheel back on. And start your lug nuts. Start with your bottom one, walk the wheel on. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to torque our wheels to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to do that in a star-like pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.